about my journey and how I came to be in commercial training at Deliveroo. I took a bit of a risk, which was...
While they might be a great idea in a vacuum, does this help me do that quicker? Does it help me do that easier? Or does it help me do that better? If it's going to take longer or make it more complicated, it's probably not going to get taken up.
When you gain that new signing, it's like winning a race. You're like, yes, come on. I'm great at my job. I just managed to do that. Nobody else managed to get him, but I did.
Hello, I'm Lissaman and welcome to Sparks, a series by Interactive Workshops. In every episode, we spark something in work and life. From how to spark meetings, to how to spark creativity, to how to spark, yet again, two brilliant guests lined up on the show for you today. Nathan, welcome back once again.
Thank you, Chris. Always great to be here.
And we've got another special guest.
Hi, nice to see you both.
Welcome, Nicola.
Nicola Frier from Deliveroo. Great to have you on the show.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me both. Thanks for the invite.
It's a pleasure. We're going to get into a little bit about sales enablement and how you spark a seller through sales enablement, because this is where you've got some expertise, I would say. Tell us a bit more about that.
I would like to think so.
Yeah.
Otherwise, why am I here?
Exactly.
I thought it was just for drinks later.
I guess a bit about my journey and how I came to be in commercial training at Deliveroo. So I previously worked as a retail manager. Actually, that's how I started my career within Topshop back in the heyday. And during the time of COVID, obviously that business saw some turbulence and I was made redundant. So very challenging time. And I was at a bit of a crossroads for the next step in my career. I could either go to a startup company or I could go to a very well-established grocery retailer. And I knew that I wanted to get into learning and development or HR, something really people-centric. That's what I had learned during my time in retail management. So I took a bit of a risk, which was go for the startup. Don't go for the really well-established grocery retailer. Go for the startup in the hope that I would be able to transition into an L&D role. And that's exactly what happened. So 6 months on, after being within that startup, there was an opportunity when we were bought over by a large American company to move into learning and development. And it's been, the rest is history from then, so they say. So yeah, I then was there in L&D for 2.5 years and more recently moved into Deliveroo. It's a company I'd always wanted to work at, and I knew that there was great opportunities there. There's a very strong culture there that they're very focused on driving development within their teams, and that's something that I was really eager to be a part of. So that's how I came to be and how my learning and development career has gone so far.
Brilliant stuff. And what's your experience been with sales programs in what you've done so far?
Yeah, so I guess something I did maybe skip over is I had maybe a brief 6-month hiatus where I was working in a sales role within a SaaS platform. So some dipping my toe in the water of a commercial role myself, but within Deliveroo primarily of developing sales programs, I am leading our kind of 3 core programs that we do for our commercial teams, which is selling, planning and negotiation. We believe that these 3 pillars are the ones that we should really be doubling down on to make you the most successful commercial professional that you can be. And I think what we're focusing on this year is not just being kind of a once and done approach. It's not that you attend this workshop and it's great and you have a really exciting and motivating day and then there's nothing that goes beyond that. It's actually really drilling into those competencies. So selling, for example, where we've done a lot to bring that into those concepts into kind of business as usual. So whether that's kind of coaching surgeries that we've put into play that weren't in play last year, for example, doing follow-up workshops with managers to make sure that they're really bringing it into their teams, creating kind of train the trainer style guides so that we've then enabled other team members to conduct that training moving forwards. We're really about trying to make that business as usual. Those concepts are being talked about every day within our daily processes and that we're really kind of focusing our energies on those competencies.
And you mentioned the wanting to move away from once and done and it be a bit more continuous. What does that continuous sales enablement program look like for you?
Yeah, I think continuous is all about assessing that what you're doing is still fit for purpose, and that also it is driving the metrics and performance that you're hoping to see from your teams. So I think it's one, having the infrastructure in place in terms of being able to gain the performance metrics, which as L&D is sometimes hard to get. At the moment, our teams, for example, are doing a huge bit of work around Salesforce. I won't take credit for it. I'm not on the project team for that, but people within the commercial L&D team are working tirelessly on that to make sure that we can hopefully get better metrics for our programs. And it's about using those metrics that you're then able to gain to your benefit. So actually, is the program in current state delivering the results that you're hoping that it was going to achieve from the get-go? And it's listening to what people actually are telling you off the back of that program. Is it giving them worth for taking forwards into their, their sales pitches or into their kind of joint business plans and presentations with what we call partners within Deliveroo? I'm really just adapting and tweaking that program and iterating on it every single time to try and make it land in the best way possible, I would say.
And metrics in L&D, I think they're never going to catch on, is it?
No, I think so. I think it could. It could. I think there's a future there.
Okay.
It's really interesting actually hearing you talking about Salesforce. We have that conversation in a lot of programs that we're going into, and the massive range of success that enablement and learning businesses and learning teams have in being able to even access that data. I'm a very passionate believer that if you do sales enablement well, it speaks for itself. If you can get the data there, even seeing some of the uptick on individual performance of individual salespeople, if you're working with the right people at the right time, then it can be huge. But yeah, it's amazing the teams and the companies that don't invest the time to have access to that data, to have the right dashboards or the right visibility. Even when they've got the CRM tools there, you can show it.
So how can we make sales enablement work for the seller? Because it can feel a bit top down from head office. How do we make it work for the people doing the selling?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting one, and it's one that we talk about a lot within kind of our wider sales enablement team at Deliveroo. We've got a go-to-market team and a B2B content team that we work with alongside learning and development to be able to give teams the right assets that they would need for engaging with partners as well. It's all about how do we make it relevant for them. I think, interestingly, within our sales program, we talk all the time about understanding a partner's needs. How do you understand that? And it's about questioning, really getting under the skin. How do you get to know your partner to be able to sell to them effectively? It's essentially the exact same that we need to be doing with our sales teams. How do we should be being proactive in getting to understand the needs of our sales teams more proactively and questioning kind of what they need from their day-to-day jobs, whether that is spending time with them in role. It's like when you have friends that you don't know what their jobs are specifically and you're like, what do you actually do, by the way? It's spending time with actually in the field with your sales teams. It's finding the opportunities or making the opportunities to go out in the field with those teams or spend time shadowing calls, etc., so that you can start to better identify those needs.
Find out what the actual day-to-day looks like.
Yeah.
And then work from there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's really interesting to me. So I feel like sometimes with that process, there's two ends of the spectrum. There's kind of, you can really well understand that day to day and then build things that are very universal, very broad, very open to interpretation, and kind of you could run it with 20 teams with slightly different roles, but have the space in it for them to adapt and apply that to their reality. You can also go very deep into the kind of specificity of building things that are totally customized and tailored for specific groups.
Yeah.
And I think my experience is that organizations have different approaches to that, and different, sometimes it's kind of cultural or almost philosophical, the belief in one or the other. Sometimes it's very specific to individual needs. Do you have that kind of approach, that kind of mindset? Where would you sit on that spectrum?
Yeah, so it's interesting. So we do have a relatively complex business, or it's been, in recent years, very much a growing business where we have different arms of the organization that have sales components to it, but are not just catering to restaurant partners, let's say, for example. So if we use the likes of our kind of selling, planning and negotiating, that was kind of initially purpose-built for our restaurant partner teams. But moving forwards, it's looking into, we have grocery now. How do we perhaps adapt and tailor that to those audiences? So I think it's understanding where you can take kind of initial frameworks and kind of wider strategies that you might be using, but understanding that there's going to be a certain level of flexibility, adaptability that you need to have, and also sometimes, I dare to say it, but also reactiveness. We need to be sometimes able to react to situations. It's good to have high level strategy, but it's also good to have a certain level of reactiveness when you need to kind of activate that.
What can we do then to get buy-in from the commercial team to the programs we're putting on?
Yeah. So I think there's a couple of different ways. So some of them are not kind of rocket science. It's probably quite a tried and tested method, but we're very much around our learning culture at Deliveroo about utilising the expertise of our commercial teams. As a commercial L&D professional, I am an expert in learning and development and that side of things, but they are out in the field doing the day-to-day work and are the experts in the commercial aspect of our business. So it's about utilising those that you've got around you. So we often work alongside our team members to develop larger programs. We'll kind of engage with, let's say, 3 to 6, that's a number, 3 to 6 individuals within the commercial teams within a spread of the different roles and remits that we have within the commercial side of the business, and work at building programs alongside them. So you're actually having an end user involved in the build process, and also then kind of that validation piece as well. Helps to get buy-in from them as individuals and also their teammates. You're a lot more likely to want to go through a program that has been validated by a commercial team member that you work alongside, and also that you can trust is going to be suitable for the end objective of increasing my performance metrics and then therefore my commission, important for all our sales teams. So that's definitely something that we try to do with all of our kind of core bigger programs, is involve our commercial teams from the get-go. I think also something to add on that we've been doing is considering, again, kind of that how do we bring our programs into business as usual. With one of our selling programs, as I say, I've actually created a adapted version for the likes of our B2B content team members and go-to-market team members to go through also. So it's saying, hey, this is what our commercial teams are learning. This is the language that they are being taught to sell in, or how they expect to receive information. So if you're wanting kind of, new campaign material or assets that you want them to utilize to land better, actually here's the language that you could be using that's going to be the best way to get that to land. And it's going to be immediately like, oh yeah, that's how I can use that moving forwards. That's a really good hook. Or here's how I can use that to build out my pitch deck, or whatever it might be moving forwards. But that's a way of kind of thinking of how you can use potentially the different pillars under your sales enablement function all together, singing in harmony, let's say, with L&D, to then really bring that all together and hopefully get the best from your sales teams.
I really love that. I mean, we talk a lot about sort of the, marketing collateral and output as one of the kind of resources in sales enablement, and work a lot with people who are saying, we want to get our salespeople to use that more. Yeah. It's interesting. I don't think I've heard before that very conscious approach of, well, let's work back up that chain and make sure that the marketing organization is using very explicitly the language and the mindset and the approaches that the salespeople are being told to use.
Yeah.
It kind of makes the surface validity more immediate, that they see that stuff as, okay, that's what I'm going to be saying to that customer. Yes, I want to use it, rather than having risk of some kind of disconnect, or it's not quite the message that I've been telling them. So if I send this, it's really nice. I like that.
Keep it simple.
Yeah,
That's what we always say in
Yeah.
L&D,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Yeah.
So often people overcomplicate things,
Yeah.
but keep it simple. If they've been taught in an X way, keep going with that way.
Yeah.
Exactly. Keep it simple. And what about for you, Nathan, to try and get that level of care from the commercial team? Are there things that you've worked with clients to do in that space?
I guess a lot of what Nicola was saying in terms of the time invested to really understand not just what the organisation wants the sales team to do, but what the sales people want and what the sales managers want to enable them to drive and to get that result. Of course, they're all very immediately and obviously kind of invested in achieving their goal and achieving their commission. That's, a fairly simple dynamic in sales, more so maybe than when we work sometimes in leadership or management or other skills areas. Just, I guess, keep it simple, taking that time to really understand that. And also, I guess, having the, again, like with what we would ask our salespeople to do, if you talk to your customer, you get them to explain their need to you, making really sure that the connection between what they've told you and what you then offer back to them is really, really blindingly obvious and explicit, and that we are directly and obviously addressing that need, rather than, I think sometimes you can see organisations sort of going through the motions of the consultation process, and we've talked to all of these stakeholder groups and we've done focus groups and we've spoken to 100 salespeople, and lo and behold, we're still doing what we set out to do before we started that process. We're just using that to validate our goals rather than very clearly actually responding to what the organisation is asking for.
Let's talk pitfalls in sales enablement. What are the pitfalls that don't actually offer something to the seller, or they're actually poor sales enablement because they don't really benefit the seller?
Well, I think Nathan's
Exactly.
just
Exactly what you just described as well.
Segue.
Which is, sometimes as L&D professionals, we can get carried away with the creative projects, or, this is going to be really exciting, cool.
Yeah.
Actually,
how much does it deliver?
How much does it deliver? And actually, just that age-old story of like, what is the end objective, and work your way backwards. So I would say you kind of hit the nail on the head.
I think one of the other things that we can easily fall into is kind of being really over-invested in the new model or the new theory or the new mindset. We want to be current. We want to be pushing fresh ideas and fresh concepts out there. But it's important to remain conscious that we're dealing with salespeople who may have been there for 10 years, who may have had 5 or 6 different the new way of selling thrown at them and shoved down their throats. So being aware of that dynamic and being pragmatic, I think at the core of kind of what we always like to bring. Here are some ideas and some things that have some validity. How do they work for you? I think where people get really kind of overly passionate about this is the way we must do things now, you can very easily disconnect with the audience, where they're saying, well, I get that, but I've been doing this for 10 years and it's been very effective. Thank you very much. So are we saying that's wrong now? So I think balancing wanting to drive new ideas with understanding that there's likely to be established ways of working that work and have worked is quite important.
Yeah, I would agree. I agree totally with that. I think sometimes it's that age-old story of quality versus quantity. It's better to do a few things really well and really get it as business as usual embedded within your business, rather than lots of little reactive, might be fun, might be fun initiatives, but you're better to do a few things just really well.
Yeah, that's making me think of a story. One of the clients that I've worked with quite a lot over the last few years had this description of kind of the headquarters of his big sales organisation, visualised as kind of a line of catapults, like old school trebuchets, just lined up in the headquarters, just launching thing after thing after thing at the sales organisation. And when you go and actually talk to the salespeople and the managers, I can't do 10% of the things that I'm being asked to do every day, every week. That prioritisation, what absolutely must be done, and let's just focus on that and sometimes try and get rid of some of the noise of all the good ideas that we can have as learning people.
Yeah. And you mentioned some of the things that matter to sellers, targets being one of those. What are the other things? And we can't speak for all sellers everywhere, in every level, in every organization, but what are those fundamentals? Targets is one of them. Are there other things?
The thing that springs to my mind is simplicity. We can easily provide loads and loads of tools that actually, if you think about it, take more time, more effort, add complexity to the job. While they might be a great idea in a vacuum, actually when you plug those into the day-to-day reality of a salesperson, if it doesn't make things easier and quicker with the fundamental kind of rigid focus on, I've got to deliver X for my customer. Does this help me do that quicker? Does it help me do that easier, or does it help me do that better? If it's going to take longer or make it more complicated, it's probably not going to get taken up.
Yeah, would agree with that point, definitely. Again, back to the keep it simple. Again, I think salespeople, yes, are driven by targets, metrics, etc. as well. But I think there is also a sense of like drive and satisfaction and that kind of personal fulfillment when you gain that new signing. It's like winning a race. You're like, yes, come on. It's not just about the financial aspect that sometimes comes along with it. It's that, yeah, I'm great at my job. I just managed to do that. Nobody else managed to get him, but I did. So I would say like that kind of sense of care is about that self-fulfillment as well. So that's why it's important to invest in yourself with the training programs or whatever is going on with your business, is because in turn that will help you be a better commercial professional and help you feel a better sense of purpose and self-fulfillment, and also hopefully some pennies in your pocket.
Yeah. So there's the human part of it as well, where you just want to achieve and you want to celebrate and you want to feel that sense of satisfaction and fulfillment, as you said. Yeah,
and hopefully that you feel like the person on the other end of the phone or the other person in the meeting or the prospect or the client is excited to do business with you. So I think also that sense of pride for the business that you work for is really key as well.
I think that's just made me think of another aspect as well in that sort of the human connection thread. Fundamentally, there's often a conception of salespeople as the sort of lone wolf mindset. It's just me, my customer, my target. I think something that we've worked with a lot of teams on sort of moving into the space of selling more subscription, recurring, partnership, services type of approach rather than selling an object. And where that works really well is often built around kind of moving into a team sales mindset. So that sense of satisfaction of doing something with your customer also gets expanded to actually, if you can shift from I've got to do this in the simplest possible way with this customer to I've got a team around me in the organization that I actually feel more meaningfully a part of because we're working together to put something better together. Quite often where that can be done, it depends what you're selling and the organization, all those kind of things. But I think, a bit of that human sort of need for community can be tied in there. If you've got a bunch of different specialists working together to get a better outcome, then it can be really rewarding in a way that ticking through a list of clients and a list of opportunities on my own probably isn't for me.
Yeah. Just championing each other a bit more. Yeah,
and finding that rewarding, meaningful community. Are there other things that we should be thinking about when we're thinking about the seller, thinking about the audience of our programs?
I think a key thing to think about is within any organization, you're also going to have a different type of seller probably within your organization. So whilst you might have, say, a set learning program, training program, whatever it is you're launching, how people interpret that within their own selling style is going to vary, and that's okay because I think we like to aim for consistency in people's approach, but also everyone is human, everyone has a personality. How they sell is going to be slightly different, and how they negotiate will be slightly different. So it's being aware of that nuance as well that comes in, and then also just if you've got different levels, roles, etc. within your teams. It's being aware of perhaps the differences that could exist there and how you maybe tailor that program, as we spoke about previously.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, that sort of the mindset of being open to the different ways people will sell. And I go back to the sort of the point I was making, like I'm a big believer in not sort of telling people this is the way, but providing, I guess that's the core in my mind of what enablement means rather than training. It's here are a set of resources that can help you do it your way. But it also, I think, one of the points of that I would say are interesting to always have in mind is people will sell differently. People also learn differently. Like you might have the same end outcome that you're aiming for with a group of 100 salespeople. Some of them want a 90-second video clip that they can watch in the car outside a customer office before they go into meetings. Some of them want a day in a room with colleagues and peers comparing ideas and this kind of thing. Some of them just want to sit and read stuff at home in between calls. So that multi-format approach allows people to do things in a way they want, when they want, and the variability of the time investment required. If you can make things flexible, some people want to actually carve out headspace and not be distracted by client commitments, calls, all of the day-to-day of sales, and be able to fully focus for a period of hours on learning and developing a new skill. Some people will, couldn't imagine taking themselves out of the day-to-day for more than an hour to watch something, think about it, and try and work out how to apply it. The more we can accommodate all of that range, I think, the better. It takes some investment and it takes some time to do that well and to have a consistent outcome from it. But it can make it really much easier for the sales team to really take up what's being offered.
Yeah, and I think it's also having the vehicle in which you're able to do all of those different formats. So a sales enablement platform
is everything, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So what you use to be able to reach your audience, whether that's global, might be regional, whatever your sales team looks like. But yeah, definitely having kind of the vehicle in which you can approach all your different salespeople in all the different ways that you wish to.
And to some extent, that brings us slightly full circle back to the point about measurement, doesn't it, where we started? We can talk about the measurement of the sales outcome of the people who've consumed the learning. That's sparking the question: how do you measure the success of those programs? It's obviously the sales outcome. I think Deliveroo are putting quite a lot of time into platform development at the moment. How is that working in terms of being able to track usage, ratings of course elements, those kinds of things?
Yeah, so we currently have a learning management system that we use, but we've taken stock, and whilst that is giving us some measurements, we are continuously trying to improve, as we spoke about earlier. And we've said, actually, for us to make kind of major headway in that space around kind of analysing metrics around certain pieces of content and assets that we may use, learning assets or B2B content, for example, and then also our in-person sessions that we do, we're actually have said perhaps an enablement platform, so a sales enablement platform rather than an LMS, or in combination with an LMS, might be the best way forward, so that we're able to look at kind of the validity of our sales programs, for example, whether that be through, okay, a new product has launched, here's the details of it, now do a scenario where actually you video yourself and you sell that back to me, having gone through your sales training previously. So we're trying to move forwards in that space as well, so that we are, as you say, able to get better metrics. So definitely we are making headway in it. I think we've been doing well at it, but there's definitely, as all L&D teams, there's still a ways to go, and we're really excited for kind of what that looks like in the coming months. So yeah, watch this space. I'll let you know.
Look forward to hearing.
Before we wrap up the podcast, Nate, tell us a little bit more about how we're sparking sellers. You must have worked with thousands of sellers, hundreds of teams.
I'd say I've lost count, but yes, probably getting there. So at IW, we're doing a whole range of these kinds of things. We're working with everything from small startups and small teams, brought in by individual leaders to work with a sales team on a specific set of skills, through to looking at sort of top level strategic enterprise level sales capabilities and developing organizations, through to, the strategic, even kind of the goal setting, the incentivization strategy, and those kinds of things that are also, we haven't really touched on today, but quite big drivers of change and of behavior in the sales organization. So yeah, we do that through projects, through embedded partnerships with sort of sales enablement teams, where we position ourselves as an extension and an on-demand resource for them, and are able to really get to know the businesses we're working with, much in the way that you know Deliveroo inside out. We try and be slightly schizophrenic and learn a whole bunch of different businesses to as deep a level as we can, and get embedded there and work out how we can get under their skin and provide some things that will help.
Fantastic. Thank you both for joining me on the show. Nicola, we'd love to have you back on again if you'd be up for it.
Sure.
And Nath, thanks for joining me once again.
Thanks a lot. Always good.
Thank you very much.
Cheers, Nicola.